to take notes for the presentation, so I'm glad we all were able to get here. Okay, I wanted to introduce Ken Kranker. He has a biology background from Cornell. He had international postdocs conducting research in English and was inspired to teach English. He got an MS in TESOL at SUNY in Albany, and he taught English in Japan for 12 years. He has taught EAP at the University of Delaware, ELI, since 2004. Thank you. Okay, Ken, it's all about you now. Okay.
No, it's not about me. But let me see if I can successfully share the screen here. Sometimes early in the morning, that's a little iffy. All right, and let me see. I'll see if I can put this in slideshow mode for us and make it look a little better. If it doesn't do that, we'll just run it like this. And there we go. How's everybody doing this morning?
We're happy to see you, Ken. We're delighted to have you.
All right, all right. And it looks like my PowerPoint is agreeing with us. So yeah, you all maybe saw the title, and some of you have said that you were attracted by the title. And you know, what I'm talking about today is pouring your life into students. So, you know, I'm an English teacher. I teach English, but I have always loved it when on course evaluations, students write things like, "I learned a lot more than English in this course." That has always thrilled me. As you might have heard in the introduction, I teach English for academic purposes. So I usually teach at high advanced levels or advanced levels. And you know, I teach content area, but I've always been somewhat personal in my approach. But as we shifted to online teaching 2 years ago, I found that I had to make a deliberate shift to become even more personal than I was previously. And that was because when you're online, you can't feel personal presence. You know, I was teaching students in China, and all I had was their faces on the screen. And you know, all they saw was a talking head. That personal presence is lacking, and it's really hard to convey, you know, care. Also, you know, when you're online, it's more difficult to interact spontaneously. Students sometimes have to mute themselves, and you know, people start to talk, and then you say, "Sorry, you're muted." And then they feel embarrassed, and then they don't say what they wanted to say. That spontaneity of interaction is considerably more, well, it's considerably lacking on the internet. And especially when we first started doing online teaching, there was this anxiety because people didn't exactly know what it was going to be like. People didn't know how exactly to relate to each other. And so I found that as I became more personal, sharing more of myself, it created an environment that was at least reasonably similar to what the classroom experience had been. So, excuse me. I want to talk just a little bit about some of the inspiration that I have had to pour my life into my students. And when I think back on my favorite teachers ever, I remember a 9th grade social studies teacher who taught Afro-Asian studies. And this woman, when we first joined the class, the first days of class, she was like a drill sergeant, very, very strict. She had very, very high expectations. She collected our notebooks every quarter, and every page of the notes had to have our names on it, the dates on it, everything. We had to have the pages in perfect order. She was very strict in that way, and she ran a tight class, at least at the beginning. But once she had established that order, over the course of the year, she became increasingly personal with us. I remember stories that she told us about how she met her husband, how she was studying in the library and she heard this guy walking and she could hear his ankles cracking. And that's what first drew her attention to him. And here I am remembering that story, 50 years later. As the year went on, she got increasingly personal with us, where she played tennis with us. I was a tennis player. I was on the tennis team. I had friends who played, and she came out and she played with us. Over the summer after we graduated, she actually hosted a party at her house. That teacher has sort of become the epitome of teaching in my mind. And of course, she taught, social studies excellently. It was her class that got me interested in Asia, and that led to my studying Chinese in graduate school and ultimately going to Japan to teach English. So somebody's giving feedback here. We might need to.
Joanna's iPhone,
Yeah,
it's making noise.
Yeah, I've turned it off. Sorry, there's something weird. Okay, yes.
Okay.
You
Okay.
could just put it on mute if you want to keep it on,
Yeah.
then it might revert.
Yeah. So anyway, I also found that whenever I have shared my life with students, they tended to respond favorably. And so that has also encouraged me to more and more want to pour my life into students. Also, you can probably tell if you look at me that I'm no spring chicken. Students sometimes tell me I look like I'm 40, but I'm actually 60. And I'm nearing retirement. And as I see that end of my teaching career drawing near, I want to impact my students more and more. So these motivations have inspired me to want to pour my life increasingly into my students. So you might be interested in how I pour my life into my students. And maybe the first thing I want to say, there we go. The first thing I want to say is I don't share political things with my students and things of that nature. I share myself. And that's what I mean, pouring my life into my students. The way I typically start any course is, getting to know people's names, but I tell them the story of my name. And, I don't know if your names have stories, but my name has a rather interesting story that I never discovered until I was in Japan, when I was in my 30s. When I was in Japan, I noticed that the Japanese have names with Chinese characters that have beautiful meanings. Some names like kaori is a lovely scent, like from a flower, or various Japanese names have various characters that have very beautiful meaning. So I became interested in what my name meant because my parents never told me what my name meant. My name is Ken Cranker, and I know that my parents chose it because it's alliterative. My sister's name is Kathy Cranker, Catherine, right? So, I could tell that they chose it for the alliteration, but the meaning they never told me, and I have a feeling they didn't even know. So I did some investigating online, and I found that my last name, Cranker, is related to the German word Kranke, spelled with a K, which means a sick person, like a hospital patient. All right. You can imagine that that's maybe not the most attractive last name. And I've tried to figure out exactly why, but I've noticed that I have this sort of sensitivity to cold, where if it gets even a little cold, like 60 degrees, my nose starts running. My father had the same issue. His father had the same issue. So I imagine my ancestors back in old Germany, where it was always cold, walking around with runny noses and people saying, "Oh, sick people, sick person, sick person." So that's kind of the story of my last name. But my first name is Kenneth, which comes from Gaelic. And Kenneth means son of fire, which is related to health and strength, right? Because when you have fire, you have warmth, you have health. When you have fire, you have strength. Even being a great leader, or believe it or not, being handsome. So when you put my name together, you can see that it's oxymoronic. I'm a healthy, sick person, which is actually very, very deep, because really all of us are healthy, sick people, right? We all can become very sick very easily. We all can lose our minds sometimes, right? We all have weaknesses, but at the same time, we all can be incredibly resilient. We can find incredible strength, right? And what we do is actually a choice. Will we be the healthy person, or will we be the sick person? And that's a little story that tends to inspire my students. We all are healthy, sick people. Let's choose to be healthy. All right. And I tell them, so, if you want to call me Professor Cranker, well, I guess that's okay, but I'd rather you call me Ken. And you know why, right? Because when I hear Professor Cranker, I cringe as though I'm the sick person. But when I hear Ken, I feel nice and strong and healthy. So then, of course, I have students share their names too, and then they become more personal with each other, and they understand each other. Now, that's probably not earth-shattering. Probably a lot of you already do things like that. I also share the story of why I'm an English teacher, because as Leslie pointed out, My background was in biology. I wanted to be a doctor. But the students want to know why I became an English teacher. And it's because when I worked in a laboratory, I was working with postdoctoral researchers who were conducting top-notch world-level research on cholesterol and heart disease, but they were doing it in their second language. And I respected that no end. And that's what I want to help my students be able to do, to be able to conduct top-notch research in English. Or, if they don't want to do research, to be able to do top-notch things, whatever it is that they choose to do in their second language. Of course, I often also share with students what I experienced living abroad and learning another language. Our program offers tutoring. And I tell the students, you really, really, really want to take advantage of that tutoring. Because when I was in Japan, I didn't have classes. I didn't have tutors. All of my study in Japanese was self-study. And I wished that I had a Japanese person next to me telling me, what was the right way to say things, what was the right way to write things. And so, take advantage of that one-to-one tutoring, right? I also share with students what it was like to study in the pressure cooker of Cornell University. I share with them mistakes that I made in Japanese. I don't know if any of you know Japanese, but the expression, when you haven't seen somebody for a long time in Japanese is "hisashiburi desu." It means it's been a long time. Well, I remember going to see someone. I was walking down the street and I saw somebody whose name I didn't quite remember. And I was wondering what's that person's name? And that person greeted me and said, "Hisashiburi desu." And I said, "Oh, hisashiburi-san, konnichiwa," right? Which I called her, Mrs. It's been a long time, right? Really, really silly stories, but my students sometimes make mistakes in English, and we have to be able to laugh about them. We learn from them, we laugh about them. It's part of the language learning experience. Another thing that I share with my students is I share about my hobbies or my challenges. I am a volleyball player. I'm a volleyball coach, and I'm a volleyball referee. So sometimes I show the class pictures of my team, and I tell them, how we did in certain tournaments or things like that. And they come to start cheering for my teams just as I do. And then, when's your next tournament, Ken? How did you do? Things like that. And it just develops this great relaxed atmosphere for studying hard for advanced level English. They know that my standards are high, but we pursue those high standards in a personal, enjoyable way. All right. My challenges, they sometimes know about the leaks in my basements and things like that after rainstorms. And their lives, as they've moved to the United States, they're getting used to homestay situations. They have various challenges, and for them to know that, yeah, I experience challenges too. It again creates an atmosphere where we can share what our difficulties are. So some of the responses that I've seen from this increased sharing of myself, pouring my life into my students, is that students do relate more personally with each other. They share opinions more. They respond to opinions. They actually get better at responses to readings and to writings. They're more open, and they more relate things that they've read to their own lives. I've also found that students feel more comfortable approaching me. They come to me for anything, even with subject matter from their science courses, because they know I have a background in science, and then they'll come to me and they'll ask me, Ken, what's a neurotransmitter, and what's serotonin, what's dopamine. I just had that conversation with students yesterday. And of course, they feel comfortable coming to me with their own academic issues within the course. Some students are feeling strain and stress as their schedule gets busier and busier with learning English and taking university courses at the same time. And they'll come to me and say, how can I handle this? Because I've shared with my life, what it was like going through the pressure cooker of Cornell. Furthermore, the students sense empathy. And empathy seems to be a buzzword these days, but genuine empathy is sometimes a little difficult to create, but you create that by pouring your life into students, right? Also, students laugh. They laugh, and when they laugh, that reduces that affective filter that Krashen talked about all those years ago. All right, they laugh, they have a good time, but they know the standards are high. This is not, a picnic, but we enjoy working hard, right? And in the end, students feel inspired. They know that my goal is to help them become as proficient in English as possible, and they're thankful for that. And they feel inspired to challenge themselves and do great things. There's one more thing I want to share about this, and this just came up 2 weeks ago, long after I had prepared this presentation. I prepared this presentation as soon as I applied for it. But 2 weeks ago, I finished a course. And we often have a last day class. That's a shortened class. It's only an hour long. Usually our classes are 2 hours. And the grades have to be in the day before that class. So I tell the students, your grades are already in. I'm not taking attendance. You don't need to come, but just let me know if you're going to come, because I need to know whether to be here. And every student in the class said, we want to be there. So we all got together and we had the last class, and the class was supposed to end at 9:15. The students stayed until 10:15. One student told me that she had found the class incredibly healing, because the class had helped her to forget about some of the difficulties in her life in Afghanistan. Another student came up after everybody left. He stayed until nearly 11:45, and he said, Ken, in Islam we have this saying that we can't thank God if we don't thank people. And I have to thank you for teaching this course and for teaching it the way you did. He said, I had shared earlier in the class, he said that he had shared earlier in the course that he had had an accident. He had been in a car accident several months ago. Well, it turned out that he and 3 other friends were in that traffic accident, and one of his friends had died. And he hadn't shared that, but he was dealing with that the whole session. But he came up to me at the end and he said, Ken, you have, the way you shared your life has helped me to put everything into perspective. And it's helped me to thrive here, even though I had that emotional luggage. And he said, you know, you drove me to do my best, and you helped me to do my best. And I don't want to give you advice or anything, but you have to keep teaching the course the same way that you're teaching it. And I said, you know, I have a conference in 2 weeks. Do you mind if I share that? And he said, no, you tell them, because they should teach the way you teach too. So anyway, that's what I mean by sharing, pouring your life into your students. Now, just a little bit of advice for pouring your life into students. I encourage you to tell stories, but you have to be pertinent. You have to be pertinent to what they are studying. I have stories related to grammar. For example, when we study prepositions, I ask them, do you know what a preposition means? What the word preposition means? Well, pre means before, pose means put, right? Prepositions are nouns that are words that are put before nouns. But I never really knew that until I was in Japan, and I saw the phrase postpositions, because Japanese doesn't have prepositions; it has postpositions. Their little words come after their nouns. And so what you learn about prepositions is that a noun always has to follow them. All right, little grammar story right there. All right, it's pertinent to the things that they're learning, and it should be brief. You don't want to go on and on and on, but you want to give a little, really poignant little nutshell of a story. Be pertinent, be brief. My second piece of advice is to be able to laugh at yourself. I laugh at myself because I can't draw. I tried to draw things on the whiteboard, and students kind of look at me and say, "What?" And I say, "Doesn't that look like a chicken?" They say, "No," right? And then I tell them the story about my brother, who got all the artistic genes. He's a great artist. He could draw anything. I got none of it, right? And it's just the way life is, right? You got to be able to laugh at yourself. And then that enables them to laugh at themselves, right? And laugh with each other. Finally, feel free to share your weaknesses. Share your weaknesses with confidence. You don't have to be up at the front of the classroom and be a perfect person. Nobody is. When you share your weaknesses, it lets down your guard, and it lets them approach you. I share with them that, I'm growing old. I have old eyes. And when they want to show me something on their phone or on their computer, I say, hey, sorry, can you blow that up a little bit for my old eyes? And then they say, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot, right? And when I walk into the class with a sweatshirt on, with a hoodie on, they say, your nose was running, right, Ken? And say, yes, it was, right? They know me because I share my weaknesses. And, do so with confidence. And that is my last bit of advice. So I guess it's time for discussion or response, whatever you want. How about you?
One person asked, can I ask the question that one person asked you?
Yeah, feel free, because I can't see the chat while I'm presenting.
Okay, when students ask questions that are too personal or inappropriate for school grade level, I guess you teach in the university.
I do.
How do or would you handle that situation?
Yeah, I would probably say, that might not be appropriate for the class, but but if you're really interested, maybe we could talk about that later. But I actually, as you said, I'm at the university, so there's very little that's age inappropriate. But no, I would only give them stuff that is appropriate to age. I would never want to share with anybody anything that's age inappropriate.
Mhm. Or does anybody want to handle the first question? How have you felt when teachers shared their stories with you in class?
So I have a student here, so she would like to answer that question.
Hello.
Okay.
When you say about these questions, it really hit in my mind because I have been through like the way you have been or say about a student learning a second language, how we feel and how I felt really touched me. And when the teacher shared the story.
Oh, hold on, somebody, we hear some background noise. Can you put yourself on mute?
The TESOL East host can do it, but maybe that's the person who's actually talking.
Yeah, maybe it's Kit. Yeah, it
Yeah, because
sounds
he's
like
not
him.
there. He's not there. Yeah, he might be the one talking. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, so when the teacher talk about his story and it really related to the student, and we feel like he's very close to us, to the student, and we feel very glad he understands it and he knows about the student mind, what they think, what we think. So we feel very confident, and we feel like we relate to the teacher and the teacher understand the student. That's the way I feel when I in class learning English.
Yeah, thank you. That's really true.
Okay, how about this question? How do you share your life in the classroom? How can you get better at it? Anybody want to handle that one?
I'll try that one. So I really love Ken's presentation. I love the parameters he sets. And I do try to practice the way he indicated. But I think as with anything, I could get better at it. Like maybe if I'm feeling embarrassed about something, I could still share it anyway. Or if I'm afraid to share something, I could share just a little bit of it. I don't have to share all of it, And I've been practicing saying me too. Nothing to do with the Me Too movement. Just when they say something very personal, intimate, and vulnerable, I've been practicing saying me too.
Yeah, that vulnerability and sharing that is really important to creating personal connections. Looks like Leah has a question.
Okay.
Okay, I'm off. Wait, I'm off mute. Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We can still hear something else in the background, but I don't think that's you.
Someone's speaking, a man, I'm not sure who it is. Anyway, first of all, I love what Francis said about saying me too. I got to remember to do that. Second of all, Ken, I love your talk. I think you're the teacher that I want to be one day. The fact that students would come and they all showed up and they don't have to be in class. They know the grades are in, and they stay an hour.
It's
late. That's really
probably me on the phone rang.
testimony to your wonderful.
Yeah, Leah, I'm sorry, you were saying something, but I think something interfered with what you said.
Yeah, there's some speaking in the background. What I was going to say is the fact that students come to your classroom after the grades are in,
Yeah.
they stay there. They stay there an hour later than they're supposed to. Really is a testimony to your great teaching skills. And I love your topic. Thank you for sharing. What I can say is that I do share my thoughts about what I want my students to call me in class. I do it on the first day of class. I do it a little bit to make them laugh. But I say things like, I put yes and no on the board. Sometimes I do that. And I say, yes, please call me Professor LeBove or Dr. LeBove. I say, what I like the best is call me teacher. I mean, just it makes me think. I've never been to Japan. Well, wait, no, I have been to Japan, but I don't speak Japanese. But it makes me think of in a Japanese style of honor.
Yeah.
That is, it's honorific. But then I ask the students not to call me Miss.
Mhm.
I have visited schools in New York, and I know in Philadelphia, Miss, and it's not to my liking. I tell the students, when I hear you say Miss, it makes me think we're at Starbucks and you want to get some coffee.
Right.
I don't have any coffee. I'm a teacher and I'll be reading your papers, or it makes me think I'm in the airplane and I'm a stewardess and you want a pillow or something. I said, I don't have any pillows. And sometimes, as I remember this semester that just finished, a student kept calling me Miss, and I told the students, I said, if you call me Miss, I probably won't even know you're speaking to me and I won't respond. So one student this semester recently said, call me Miss. And finally I was just doing something else. And then he called me teacher and I made a big deal about it. Oh, you're asking for me. I'll come over and I'll say, what do you want? Because I read their papers, right? I read,
Yeah.
that's my job. That's what I want to do. So I'm their teacher. I'm their professor. I'm not,
Miss.
I know, and I said to them next semester, your next professor, maybe they think something else. I don't know. But this is what I would like. I share with them. I would like. And I asked them on the first day what they would like me to call them. I put like my name is, it's like name tags or something or whatever. But it's just kind of like sharing personal preference.
Yeah.
At this point, I'd like to apologize. I got a phone call and I picked it up on the cell phone in the next room, and I don't know, I'm not that great at computers. I'm not an IT guy. And I didn't realize that the phone call could bleed in to the conversation, so I apologize. If that happens again, what do you do? Just press mute yourself?
Yes, yeah.
All right. Did you people hear the whole conversation?
Yeah, we heard it, but we didn't hear
We-
specifically what you said.
Yeah, we couldn't understand it, but we could hear it.
Oh, I see. All right.
We love
I
you.
apologize.
We love you anyway.
Ken, I have two personal questions for you. First, where are you from originally?
Albany,
And
New
second,
York.
where did you teach in Japan?
Okay. The answer to the first is I was born in Albany, New York. I grew up in a suburb of Albany called Colony. So it's in the capital district of New York State.
Okay, I was born in Schenectady and spent
Ah.
most of my childhood in Troy.
Yes. So the Tri-City area for sure.
Right.
And
what about Japan?
Yeah, Japan, I lived in a rather small city by Japanese standards in the northeastern part of Japan called Yamagata City. it was a city of 250,000 people, which by American standards, that's a pretty large city, but by Japanese standards, that's rather small. And people in Japan said, "Oh, inaka desu ne," which means, "Oh, that's the country." So yeah, Yamagata City was where I was.
Is that in Tohoku?
Yeah, it is in Tohoku. It's about an hour west of Sendai.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Barb has her hand up. I noticed that before Kit asked his question.
Sure. First of all, thank you for this presentation. It's one of those that when I listen to it, I get inspired to push myself a little bit. So I really appreciate it. And I wanted to just mention in question number 2, how do you share your life?
Yes.
As you mentioned, in an online environment, I'm the teacher who walks around the room with big pictures, and you don't have that. And you're in my classroom right now. This is where I teach. I put the map in the background because I thought that was kind of cool. But I found that after a while, I was even getting a little bored.
Yes.
Now, I chose this as my classroom because it's my dining room table and there's plenty of room and I can have things lying all around and I can pull things up and have realia here and something else there. But I started doing something different. I started moving around my house sometimes.
Oh, interesting.
And not only was it good for the students because they saw different backgrounds and it made me, I think, a little more personable. They could see where I lived. I mean, there was some places I didn't go, of course, right?
Yeah.
Like only the public rooms, right? But as an aside, it forced me to clean my house before class every day too. So it kind of worked well for everybody. So we would walk, sometimes I would meet them at the front door and we'd walk in together, almost like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yeah.
When we talked about count and non-count nouns, we'd go in the kitchen and get our flour and our sugar. And so it was actually kind of fun for them.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. At the end, on our last day together, we all took ourselves around our homes. So they had already seen mine and then they took us around theirs a little bit. So just to kind of replace that interaction, that physical interaction in the classroom that just doesn't work online. So I'm just going to throw that out as a possibility.
That's a really, really interesting idea. That's thinking outside the box for sure, and it's wonderful. Looks
Joanna,
like
do you have another question?
You're muted.
No, at the moment, I was just looking at chat to see if anybody else respond, Yeah. Oh, that's what I was doing. What an interesting topic.
Does anybody else have anything to share?
Well, okay, I'll say something, which is that this is very thoughtful, thought-provoking topic and presentation. And I love what Barb talked about sharing her home. There is a balance. It's interesting, like about the students' lives and our lives, and when we meet at school. Like I teach at the Community College of Philadelphia, CCP. So they come to us and then we don't really learn much about their homes. But now I've been teaching online, like so many people, and we enter their lives more so. Sometimes students want to share with me their lives, things that are not going well. It's interesting because there's a power dynamic because I never share with my students things that are not going well in my life because I try to just think, like I want to share good things. So do you know what I'm saying? Where it's like I come into class or face to face or online, and I'm in a whole different space psychologically because I'm thinking with my students. So even though something negative might have happened in my life, I put it to the side. I'd never share that. Do you know what I'm saying? It just occurred to me now.
Yes, there definitely is room for compartmentalization, right? Yeah, you have to keep it professional, and you have to keep it, as I said, pertinent. But at the beginning of class, if you ask students how are they doing, and then they ask you, well, how are you? Take 10 seconds and say something brief about what challenges you're facing.
Yeah, usually I say great, and I mean it because I'm so happy to be with them and just finishing my lesson plan and being there ready to go. Things are going well. I gotta think more about this fascinating topic. Love it.
Another person has a question. Hold on, I just lost it. All right. Anything funny, interesting to share with us that your students said online? Did you mention online interaction, Ken?
Yes, I did, talk about, the online interaction or lack thereof is sort of what drove me to become increasingly personal in my classroom. But anything funny, interesting to share that my students have said online? Well, here's one. I tell my students a story about how I used to do wedding ceremonies in Japanese when I was in Japan. And you can imagine that language is not your everyday, hello, goodbye Japanese. And so it was challenging. And I found that if I didn't sleep well before those wedding ceremonies, my Japanese suffered much, much more than my English suffers. That L2 suffers from lack of sleep much more than L1 does. And so I encourage my students to sleep well. Sometimes I even put that in the homework assignments. I say, sleep well. So, sometimes my students will talk about, for example, what kind of pillow they have and how they like to have an extra pillow with them that they can hug while they sleep, and it helps them sleep. So anyway, I don't know if that's funny. That's a little interesting anyhow. So yeah, sometimes I'll ask them, did you do the homework? And they say, what homework? I said, sleep well. I put that in the announcement. They say, oh, yeah. Right.
Francie has a question.
No, I didn't. It was more just response to, thinking about something else that I do. So what they did in my class was, I think they gave us an hour or something like this, and it was like freshman composition. I did have some ESL students in there, but it was other students too. And some of them were weaker, so it was a link between like students that were not in college and others were in college. And so it didn't make sense to me to teach writing. I'm teaching academic writing, college level. It didn't make sense. 1 hour, so what I did was I just collected all the hours in the week, my office hours and everything, and I divided the class and I met with each person individually.
Yes.
And I know that then you lose out on that whole group, but to me, I didn't, then you're just talking about writing, you're not writing. So
yes.
In order for me to get them to pass with the time they gave me, I just felt like it would be a waste of time and they would be there in their boxes and I don't know. So I'm sure somebody more techie than me could do it. But so it worked out really well because each person had an individual relationship with me and they felt more comfortable to be vulnerable when others weren't there. And we could pull their writing up, we could deal with it.
Yes, I'm doing that with my E110 freshman comp even now. Just yesterday, I had those individual meetings with students instead of class. Yep. Looks like Leah has a question or comment.
Oh, well, I was thinking about something, but I'm happy to share. I didn't, did you see a hand raise?
Oh, it looks like maybe you didn't take it down from before. I'm not sure.
I don't know how, okay, let me try to do.
Teacher, I can put my hand up, but I can't take it down.
Oh, take my hand. I get it. Okay, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I will say one thing, which is that in regard to your topic, this past spring semester, I taught for 5 weeks online, and then the rest was face-to-face, because Susie P went back to face-to-face. So I was in class and I met the students for the first time. And Leslie Kirshner-Morris, she was with me as my tutor, so she'll remember this. I met each student. I got to know them and their names. And it was an overwhelming experience for me. In my teaching career, this has never happened to me before. And I went to student to student. Remember, I only met them online. And now I was meeting them face to face. And I said, oh, you're Tracy. Hi there. You are Thomas. Hi there. And I got to know them. I mean, the next week it was back to normal. And even my following class, the class after that. The first day, I was completely overwhelmed in a good way. But maybe it's because I'd taken 3 semesters off for personal thing, stuff. But my mom had passed. But the point is, I was my first time back on campus. But seeing the students, and they could tell I was affected, that I was deeply impacted by meeting them. So that's like sharing my life, that they could tell that in a good way. And then after a while, everything was back to normal. But just meeting them for the first time was just, I will never forget what an impact that had on me.
Yeah.
Share that.
You know what, Ken?
Yes, Leslie.
I can see it's getting late and we don't have a lot more time left, but could I just take this back to a lecture that Chrissy gave on March 12th? Can I connect your work to his a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So what Kit was saying in that session in March was that he remembers from his work in Japan that he used some of the old time methods like Silent Way and TPR and counseling learning. And what I'm seeing in your work are actually some vestiges of counseling learning. And I'm glad you're laughing, because do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Your focus is on your students. You're not telling them or exposing vulnerabilities about yourself to get their feedback. You're sharing your wealth of experience in order to lower the affective filter, to show them that you have empathy for them, which in turn, I think, builds empathy for you and builds community, classroom community.
Yes.
And I think that the richness of your presentation and Kit's presentation, which will stay with me for a long, long time, is this idea that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We are eclectic in our approach. Everything that we know from the past, we use for today and we build on it. And I'll never forget, I studied with Earl Stevick for 1 semester at Columbia. You remember the book he wrote, Memory, Meaning, and Method? And he said that when we create these emotional, sensory experiences, whether it's a great story, or there's a smell attached to it, or a song attached to it, those language learning experiences stay in the memory. And like you said, those stories that our teachers told us when we were in middle school or high school, and they may have been irrelevant to the content at the time, but you remember the person and their story.
Right.
And I think it all ties together with what Kit was talking about with the counseling learning, where you're focusing on the other person's well-being. So I just want to thank you so much for coming today. We've learned a great deal and we're making connections. We're gonna need some time to process it, right, Leah? She's like, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. May I add one thing that builds on what you just said?
Sure.
I told you that I'm a volleyball coach, and I tell my students that I'm a volleyball coach. And in volleyball, the setter sets the ball up so that the hitter can spike it down, right? But what I teach my setters is that you don't set the ball, you set the hitter. You have to know your hitters, and you have to set the ball where each hitter hits it best. And it's very similar in teaching. We don't teach the content, we teach the students. And that is a clear message that I want to send.
How do you say thank you in Japanese?
Arigatou gozaimashita.
Oh, wow. Kit, can you say it for us?
Pardon, Leslie?
Can you
Yeah.
say thank you in Japanese? You can for us? I don't have
Yeah,
that
you want me to
memory.
thank you? Yeah,
Arigato.
Doitashimashite. You're welcome.
Arigato.
Arigato.
That's it. Arigato.
Doitashimashite.
Don't touch the mustache.
That's funny. I've never heard that.
We have a couple more minutes. Does anybody else want to share anything or ask a question?
I just want to say a big thank you. Just a huge, huge thank you to Professor Kranker. This session, it was so validating and it took me to another level. I'm going to feel much freer now to open myself up in ways that will really shift my teaching. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Like my student said, Ken, you got to teach the other teachers to teach that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Ken. I love this. I always impact my teaching.
No, thank you very much, Leah. Thanks for coming and contributing.
And Richard Baker, can you say what you said in the chat?
Yes, Ken, this was very worthwhile and makes me think.
Great. Thank you. I do want to be worthwhile. That's
Can I add that years ago, I was teaching secondary school Spanish, and I was trying to share my stories after having gone to, I don't know, it was MLA or ACTFL or something, where I heard a similar conversation to what you gave us.
uh-huh.
And I tried to do everything appropriately, etc. But about 3 days later, the principal came in and advised me not to talk about myself, just to teach the course. I don't know if he got phone calls from parents. I don't know. Never got the end of it. So I've always been a little hesitant since then, but I do agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, keep it pertinent, professional.
I thought I had, but okay.
But also that was grade school or something like that rather than higher ed. So that makes a big difference.
Actually, that was high school.
Yeah, so I think because it's underage, it makes a big difference for some reason. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Ken, for presenting.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your Saturday to come.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, stay safe, and be well.
Right.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Am I free to go?
Ken, are you going to
Yes,
show up?
Ken, you are.
Are you going to be able to attend the May 16th conference, TESOL East?
Oh, yeah,
Not
no.
May 16th to 21st.
Yeah, that's unfortunately that's a no.
All right.
I have done it in the past. I like that conference actually better than the fall one. but it's not going to work for me this year.
All right. Well, we'll be thinking of you. We know that you're with us in spirit.
Yeah. Thank you. And do you think this would be appropriate to share there?
I think it's essential information. I remember one time I went to Columbia University for one of their Saturday reunions.
Yeah.
And Donald Graves was the main plenary speaker that day. And I couldn't get into the auditorium on time because New York City's finest was giving me a parking ticket for not wearing my seatbelt. And when I walked in, I just very emboldenedly walked up to Donald Graves and I said, Dr. Graves, I'm really sorry I missed your speech. I was getting a ticket for not wearing my seatbelt. And I'm embarrassed to ask you this, but what did you talk about? And he said, the essence of what I talked about today was the importance of taking an interest in other people's work.
Yeah.
So when you share your work with us and you tell us that we can collaborate this way and build on each other's strengths, it gives me the confidence to move forward. And I wouldn't, if Richard Baker's administrator had scolded me for that, I would take that pat on the, that slap on the wrist, and I would still keep on going. Because you know what, they don't know anything. A lot of the administrators don't really know what they're talking about when it comes to second language acquisition.
Yeah.
And maybe he was just too green or too young to defend himself. But sometimes if you have the pedagogies to say, this is how I reduce my affective filter, in a classroom. And also students might have misunderstood him.
Possible, right?
I'm sure he didn't say anything offensive. So that's really my takeaway now, is that you shared your work with us, and now we need to think more deeply about how your work can influence our work.
Well, good. Yeah, I would hate to get anybody in trouble.
Well, you didn't, and you won't, and he'll be fine, and he is fine.
Great. Rita, thank you for your chats. I'm seeing them come up. Thanks for staying. All right.
Bye-bye.
So I'm gonna leave, but thank you all. I really do appreciate it. Just one more thing. I really like Penn TESOL East.
Thank you.
I find that the giant TESOL conferences are not exactly my cup of tea.
They're overwhelming.
Yeah. But the smaller, the regional, I like being involved with the smaller stuff. I like Penn TESOL East.
Thanks, Ken. And we're so affordable. $25 to join.
Yeah. All right.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.